Hello everybody, welcome to F1 Grandstand. I'm Tony Craig, and if you are an F1 fan, of course, you're in the right place. We are going to be talking about the Hungarian Grand Prix race today. We're going to do a full roundup, all the drama of the day, but just to be clear, we are calling the Hungarian Grand Prix the Snoozefest in Budapest, because let's be honest, it was dull, but it wasn't without controversy. We saw controversy with Charles Leclerc. We saw controversy with Lewis Hamilton of a different kind. George Russell getting involved. Even the McLarens, well, it wasn't the way I thought they would finish, but let's get into it all. Oh, and also we've got our driver of the day, which might surprise you. Let's get into it. First of all, we all know, congratulations, Lando Norris, your race winner. Did a good job. So Oscar Piastri actually looked like the stronger of the two drivers, I thought. However, they were both supposed to be on a two-stop strategy, and Norris's team decided it would be a good idea to flip him to a one-stop strategy, and boy, were they right. They got him out in front of Piastri, and Piastri on a two-stop couldn't get out of the pits in front of Norris. He was quite a bit behind, actually, but he did make up the time. And at the end, we saw Norris ahead of Piastri by 0.5. We did see Piastri try and pass Norris on lap 68 into turn one, because that's the only place you can possibly pass on this track, because it really is the Poundland Monaco. There's no way of overtaking. It just doesn't have the glitz and glamour of Monaco. Hence why it's the Poundland Monaco. But either way, Piastri did try to pass Norris with 2 laps to go. Going down the inside, he locked up. The gap wasn't there. He wasn't close enough. But he did make it look like he had a go. But as it stands, Lando Norris, P1, Oscar Piastri, 0.6 behind in P2. So my prediction of Piastri winning this race, out the window. It was a McLaren. Again, McLaren dominant. That is always going to be the story, I think, until the end of the season. That McLaren car is head and shoulders above any other manufacturer. I think they've increased their lead in the constructors to nearly 300 points over Ferrari. Yeah, McLaren are not getting caught. It's just which driver is going to take the title. Which one? I'm backing Piastri, although Norris, showed me today that I was wrong about Piastri winning today and Norris took it. But I do think, who made that decision? Who chose to switch Norris's pit strategy to a one-stopper? Was it Norris? Was it his pit crew? Either way, it was a great decision, and that put Lando Norris right at the top on P1. Tell me who you think is going to win this season. Which driver is going to take it, Norris or Piastri? To be honest, that was pretty much one of the only pieces of drama on the racetrack, was Piastri trying to overtake Norris on lap 68, because it was a snooze fest. We shouldn't be having races, by the way, where it's impossible to overtake. As fans, we can't watch 70 laps of a snake of drivers just going round and just staying in your qualifying position. At least at Monaco, there's a bit of glitz and glamour. At Hungary, it's just not cool to watch 20 cars. And there's only one car that didn't finish the race. And that was Ollie Behrman. There was no incidents. I don't even think there was a yellow flag. There was no safety car. There was no weather to make it interesting. It was literally a snooze fest. The only place to pass anyone on that track was turn one. So yeah, welcome to the Hungaroring. So that's what happened. So your winner is Lando Norris, and he won it because of pit strategy. And that's the only way people were really passing cars today, a better pit strategy. And the one-stop strategy for Norris was good. It worked for him. So Piastri in P2. McLaren dominant. So where does the drama come from? Well, I can tell you. The drama comes from this guy. Charles Leclerc, put it on P1, which we're all very impressed with, to get the Ferrari P1 in qualifying. Yes, round of applause for Leclerc. Round of applause. That's a result. He did very, very well achieving that. I am not knocking that. However, if you listened to George Russell's interview at the end of the race, George was very vocal about what he thought was happening. So Leclerc was quick at the beginning. Why was he quick at the beginning? Okay, let's get technical. The plank under the car was creating an awful lot of friction and sparks. What does that tell us? The ride height is low, and we are seeing the ride height. We're seeing the plank wear early on in the Grand Prix. He's on a two-stop strategy. First stop, we still see that Ferrari competitive and quick. Sparks coming out from the plank wear, and then we have second pit stop, and then we see Leclerc's car come out slow, like a lot slower. I mean, a lot slower. So why has that Ferrari all of a sudden? Why is it so much slower down the straight? And why does it seem to be handling like a different car? Right, so we're all watching this going, what could be going on? Well, thank you to George Russell, who told us what was going on. He said he thinks that the engine was turned up in the early parts of the race and the car was running illegally low. So what do they do after the second pit stop? Because you've got to remember, all the cars share data communally, so all the teams can see what the other teams are doing. But there is a way of changing some things on the car without teams knowing that data. So what George said was, when he came out after his second pit stop, they increased their tyre pressures, which meant the tyres would be less grippy. But what it also means is the ride height of the car is lifted. And he also believes in that final stint, they turned the engine down. Why is that important? Well, at the end of the straight, and don't forget, there isn't really there's one straight really, isn't there? At Hungaroring. And at the bottom of the main straight, when you are hitting full tilt, that is where you are going to see the most amount of pressure on the rear wing, and you're going to see the lowest amount of ride height. But if you're worried that you've been running an illegal ride height and causing a lot of plank wear, you know you cannot run at full tilt, because you are going to be driving an illegal car, which is going to have more plank wear than is allowed. So this is George Russell. He said, well, I think they've increased the tyre pressures, which the other teams wouldn't know about at that point, and they've reduced the engine power in order for Leclerc to finish the race with the appropriate amount of plank wear to make the car legal. Oh, wow, George dropping bombshells. And you know what? I think he's right. Because remember what happened to the Ferrari at China, wasn't it? They got disqualified for a low ride height. So it makes sense that this increase in performance that we've seen in the Ferrari, it's shenanigans. They're running the car illegally low in the early part of the Grand Prix, seeing the plank wear, you could see it. You could see the sparks coming off. You're thinking that's, no other car was doing that on the grid. And then the car to be so slow in his third stint after his second pit stop, handling like a bag of spanners. The car was awful. He was slow. George Russell managed to do an overtake maneuver at the Hungaroring, putting him into P3 and Leclerc into P4. Why? Why was the car so much slower? Well, that's why. I think George is absolutely spot on. Ferrari, shenanigans going on. And that's why in that final stint we saw the Ferrari that slow. And that is why we didn't see Leclerc on a podium today. So yeah. These improvements in Ferrari, are they shenanigans? Or are we seeing an actual improvement in the car. I think it's shenanigans. I agree with you, George. Oh, Anthony's in the chat. Hi, Anthony. Did they announce the 2 drivers of the Grand Prix for Cadillac, or confirm them at least? Anthony, I can tell you, my man Tubby George, who's got the inside track on the Cadillac drivers, it's not been announced officially, and we're not going to see an official announcement yet. We might see it after this break. We will definitely see it in the next part of this season, maybe within the next 2 races. But Cadillac favour 2 experienced drivers, and those 2 drivers are Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. Now, what I can tell you about Valtteri Bottas is, according to my man Tubby George, at Silverstone Grand Prix, there was a gentleman's agreement, a handshake between Valtteri Bottas and Cadillac, that he will be driving for them next season. They want him. They want him because of his record. You got to think about Valtteri Bottas. 30% of the Grand Prix he's entered, he's been on the podium. 60% of the Grand Prix he's entered, he's been in the points. So what do Cadillac need in their first season? Cadillac, doesn't matter who you are, first season in Formula One is horrible. Absolutely horrible. Okay? So Cadillac need those 2 experienced drivers, and that's what we're going to see. Perez and Bottas year 1, and they'll have an American driver in that 3rd seat, which they'll be probably getting him ready for the year after. So that's what I think's happening at Cadillac, Anthony. Thank you so much for getting in the chat window. But back to the Hungarian roundup. So that's Ferrari. That's Charles Leclerc. Shenanigans going on, and there is a rumour that he may get disqualified from the race. We are waiting to see, because I think Mercedes have put in a complaint. We will find out. And speaking of bad news at Ferrari, I need to touch on Lewis Hamilton. So what's been going on? Lewis Hamilton put the car on P12 in qualifying. Leclerc put the Ferrari P1. And in the race today, Hamilton decided to run a one-stop strategy, which honestly was the right choice to make. Did he improve? No, he didn't. He finished P12 behind Hadjar and behind Kimi Antonelli, whilst Leclerc P4 for now, but Leclerc could lose his time. We don't know yet. But there is drama going on at Ferrari. All I can tell you is, did you see Lewis after the race? Wow. Have you ever seen somebody so dejected, so morally bankrupt? The guy, morally bankrupt's not the right word. He just deflated, heartbroken, I think is the word. 7-time world champion. With no excuse that his teammate put the car P1 and he put the car P12, and then Leclerc to finish P4 and for him to finish P12 again. He just wants this first, he just wants to get into the summer break. I feel for him. But my question to you, anyone who's in the chat, is can we see Hamilton come back for the next 10 races and really get to grips with this Ferrari? Are we ever going to see Hamilton winning again? Are we going to see Hamilton win his 8th world championship to prove to the world that, well, for him to get the record of the most world championships for any driver in history? Do you think he can do it? Or have the sands of time got to him? Is it too late? I mean, it happens to everybody, right? Every sports person has to accept that as you get older, your skills, and you're talking about hundredths of a second in reaction time and talent that can be the difference of winning or losing. So as you get older, surely it's a tougher battle. But then you could argue you've got all the experience, all that knowledge. It's almost like it's so ingrained knowing the right thing to do. If you watched when Max Verstappen today and Lewis were side by side, they only both stayed on the track because Lewis has all that experience and he is a great driver. Because Max was in the wrong. He put a move on Lewis when his front axle was not up to his wing mirrors, which is what they say. If it's your line, your front axle needs to be in line with the car you're passing's wing mirrors. He wasn't. But Lewis gave him the room, which another driver would have taken them both out. He didn't. So there are these things that an experienced driver like Lewis has got. But has he lost that 10th of speed that he's going to need to win races again? So Lewis, at the end of this Grand Prix, was absolutely dejected. He said himself that he honestly, I think, was close to tears. He even said there will be some tears. He's going to see some friends. He's going to go for some walks. And I think he's going to try and refocus coming back for the last 10 races. And do you know what? If anyone can do it, it is Lewis. Because does age... It's a hard one. I don't know. Because when you look at other sports people like Ronaldo, for instance, Cristiano Ronaldo, top of his game. In a sport, you know, he sleeps in oxygen tents. He's taking these supplements. He's training, whatever it is he's doing to keep himself, with his cryo chamber or whatever the hell he's got in his house, to keep himself at the top of his game. I should imagine that Lewis is doing this all the same things. He's trying to make sure that the sands of time are not going to affect his performance. So if he goes off for 2 weeks now and recharges, comes back, I'd like to think we'll see a stronger Lewis. And what he needs to do is only worry about beating his teammate. He needs to get in front of Leclerc. If he can do that, I think that will give him the confidence to kick on. And we might see him winning a world championship in a Ferrari, because next year it's all change. The 2026 cars are completely different. It's a whole new platform. It's a level playing field, really. You're going to see teams that have not done well be competitive. Aston Martin, for a good example. If you don't think the car Adrian Newey is designing for Aston Martin is not going to be a competitor next year, then you are crazy. Adrian Newey has won more world championships than anyone else in history. Lewis Hamilton's won 7. Adrian Newey's won 13. 13 of his 13 constructor championships. His cars, his designs. He really is the most successful man in Formula One. Aston Martin have got him. They were right to give him shares in the race team. So if you don't think Aston Martin are going to come back in 2026 with a competitive car, then you are crazy. It's going to be very, very exciting to see. Now, speaking of Aston Martin, I'm going to bring on to a more positive story for today. So, Fernando Alonso, driver of the day for me. He put the Aston Martin, so he qualified P5. He finished P5. And don't forget, Aston Martin were P19, P20 qualifying in Spa. Finished right at the back of the grid, nil point. They've come into this race. And Fernando Alonso, with a back injury, puts the Aston P5. A great point scoring weekend for Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso P5, Lance Stroll P7. And just to give Lance Stroll his props, Lance Stroll was only 100th behind Fernando Alonso in qualifying. So Lance Stroll putting in a shift as well. But congratulations, Fernando Alonso, driver of the day, Aston Martin. Let's see what they can do for the rest of the season. But hopefully this new upgrade, which is a new front wing, which they did test at Spa. They didn't run it in the race, I don't think, which is why they did so terribly. But I think they've got this new front wing dialed in. Oh God, there's loads of messages. Anthony, so I'm going to try and catch up. Yeah, the shenanigans at the malfunction with the engine, that's why it was running at high temperature. Oh, you're talking about the Ferrari. So Anthony's talking about the Ferrari. Yeah, the Ferrari, there was shenanigans, mate. If they turned the engine down, maybe it was running at high temperatures. But yeah, I don't know. I think George Russell is probably correct. I think the increased tyre temperatures to really make sure the car was going to be legal when it comes to the ride height at the end of the race. I think that's more like it. And then the comments from George Russell were more of a heat in the moment thing, and he was upset about losing the race. No, honestly, George Russell knew he wasn't going to win the race. I have to say, Anthony, George Russell knew that Mercedes could not win the race. Where did he qualify? Russell qualified P4, and he was a couple of tenths off Leclerc. But that Mercedes does not have the balance. It chews up tyres. That Mercedes only works well in cool, dry conditions. It's not good when it's too hot. It's not good in the wet. There's one little window where that Mercedes works. And that's why, and that was obviously in Canada. We saw both Mercedes doing well, and we saw George Russell take the win, and Kimi Antonelli getting a podium, P3. But no, that Mercedes was never going to win the race. I think P3 was best he could hope for, and he did that. And that's the thing about George Russell. I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but he always gets the maximum out of the car. So, Fernando Alonso, driver of the day. I hope you agree with me. Great to see Aston Martin being competitive again. Now, another driver who absolutely needs recognition today. Sauber driver, Gabriel Bortoleto. What a drive. Put the car P6, qualified P7 in the Sauber. You know, showing why he's an F2 champion. He's a talent. I'm telling you, Gabriel Bortoleto is a talent. Great driver. Be exciting to see him when Audi take over Sauber next season. But is this guy a talent? Oh yeah. Yes, he is. And we should be giving him a shout out. Good point scoring day. Because when we think about Nico Hülkenberg finishing P13, what is the golden rule? You have to beat your teammate. You have to beat your teammate. And Bortoleto did that today convincingly. He out-qualified him as well. So Nico Hülkenberg qualified P19. Bortoleto qualified P7. Finished P6. Excellent result. Excellent result. I think we can all agree. I really like this driver. I really do. I think that he is going to be in demand by the top teams, I think. I think he's had a fantastic season, getting better and better with every Grand Prix. With every Grand Prix. Anthony's jumped in. What he's saying is that Cadillac, I have the feeling once Cadillac get established with Val and Sergio, they're going to try and get a young driver like Gabriel. They're definitely going to get a young driver, no doubt. So Cadillac, going back to everyone loves the Cadillac conversation. Everyone's like, who is going to drive for Cadillac? I think I've given you a spoiler, really. It's going to be Perez and Bottas. But the third driver's seat is going to be a young American driver, because they're going to use the experienced drivers to help develop the platform for the car, because everybody has a horrible season in season one. Everybody, don't care who you are. You're not going to be winning season one. Season two, you're going to get better. So they'll have an American driver, seat 3, to get his points up. And if it's someone like Colton Herta, they're going to use the season to get him his enough super license points so he can get the drive in 2027. That's what's going to happen at Cadillac. And it's a sensible move, because it's like what Graham Loudon said. He said, we're a Formula One team. And I said, I understand Cadillac want an American driver in the seat, but we have to give the drivers seats on merit, not on geography. And I couldn't agree with him more. You cannot win a championship just because you've taken a driver because he's from the right part of the world. You need to choose the best drivers that are going to help you develop the team and bring in the points, because you want to survive. And your first season in Formula One, you have to survive. That's what it is. You have to survive. And in order to do that, you need to have the right men at the wheel. And that can't just be a decision made on geography. But mark my words, Cadillac will have an all-American team in 3 or 4 years. They'll have American car, American power plant, and American drivers. I don't doubt it. But give it 4 or 5 years. And actually, in 4 or 5 years, you're going to see Cadillac will be relentless. The one thing I know about those guys is they want to win, and they want it to be all American. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what they'll do. Thanks, Anthony, for getting involved in the chat. Now, we talked about him earlier, but I've got to bring him in. George Russell, again. George Russell, he's Mr. Consistent, isn't he? He's had all of this drama with Mercedes not offering him his contract until this week. He had his boss flirting with Max Verstappen while he's going, hey, my drive isn't sorted for 2026. He's been bringing in consistent results for Mercedes, maximizing the points opportunities for that car, consistently beating Kimi Antonelli, showing he's a number one driver. And then turns out Max is not going to be available in 2026. And now Toto Wolff has said to George, okay, George, I can't do it. I'm going to try and do a Toto Wolff impression. George, I have a contract for you, George. Okay, I've got a contract for you, George. So they've offered him a two-year contract, 30 million a year. But George, in his post-race interview today, I thought was fascinating because he turned around and said, well, I've been waiting a year for my contract. It's got to be right. Nothing's decided yet. He's absolutely, the boot is on the other foot. He was waiting for an offer from Mercedes and now he's making them wait. But what a clever thing to do, because George is putting in shifts Grand Prix after Grand Prix, isn't he? He is showing the world that he is a top driver. So why shouldn't he take his time and see what offers come in for him? He knows he's got an offer on the table because Mercedes, where are they going to go? Like now Max is not going to be available to drive for them in 2026. Who've they got to be their number one driver? Who on that grid could be the number one driver in that Mercedes car that's better than George Russell and not Max Verstappen? Tell me in the chat. I'd love to know what you think. Who would be a better number one driver at Mercedes than George, but it can't be Max Verstappen? What's the answer to that question? I don't think there is one. I don't think there is a better driver than George for that number one seat Mercedes. So no wonder George is now going, okay, I understand that you do want me to drive for you next year and the year after. And I understand you're offering me 30 million. That's what's on the table, 30 million a year. But he knows he's going to get other offers. Will they be bigger or better offers? Could he get an offer? I know the offer do you know what? I'm going to give you an exclusive. Aston Martin are bringing an Adrian Newey car to the grid in 2026. They're bringing a Honda power plant exclusively to them. The Aston Martin package next year is going to be phenomenal. Now, is Fernando going to drive for them next year? Apparently he is. But will he change his mind? He had back problems today. Yeah, he had back problems today. He did a great job, though. My driver of the day, finished P5. But will he drive for Aston next year? If he doesn't, could we see George Russell, number one driver, Aston Martin, with Lance Stroll, in an Adrian Newey car? Maybe. Do you not think there's going to be a conversation? He'd be in every right to have that conversation, wouldn't he? After what Toto did with his holiday in Sardinia, where he just happened to be courting Max. You know, Toto sees Max as the future, possibly, at Mercedes. He sees George as a short term. So why wouldn't George go, okay, now the ball's in my court. I've got the contract offer. It's 30 mil a year. That's okay. But you're talking about Lawrence Stroll here, owner of Aston Martin, and you're talking about an Adrian Newey car in a new technical era of Formula One, which always levels the playing field. Everyone's coming back with a new car on a new platform, and we don't know which car is going to be the best car on the grid. We don't know which is going to be the best platform. But I know that Aston Martin, with their team, they're going to be up there, if not the best car on the grid. So if George isn't rushing to sign his Mercedes contract, why? Why is he not? Is he just wants to make Toto Wolff sweat because he felt that Toto was doing that to him? Or are there conversations going on which could see George Russell in an Aston Martin? Anthony thinks Max Verstappen. We could see Max Verstappen in an Aston Martin. I don't think we'd see Max Verstappen in an Aston Martin. If any, I actually think, I know why you said that, obviously, with the connection to Newey, but I actually think it's more likely that we see Max's move go to a Mercedes than an Aston. I think it's more likely that if there is a reshuffle in, say, 2027, we could see Max going to Mercedes and George going to Aston Martin. If there isn't an upset, if there isn't some strange shenanigans that goes on before the end of the season, it'll get exciting, you know, contract negotiations, driver movements. We need to stay tuned for that, because by the end of this season, we are going to see a lot of that going on. So George Russell, result today, you know, we saw him a great podium, P3, qualified P4. He did a fantastic job, and I think he's absolutely right with what he said about Leclerc's car. I think he called it. I think they were running the car too low. I think they did turn the engine down in their third stint, and I think they did increase the tyre pressures to ensure that Ferrari would be legal. And I think we might see this investigation and debate going on for a while. And it is possible that Leclerc could lose his points and his time this weekend. So yeah, George Russell, right on point as always. Anthony, going to the chat. Matt's going to have a feeling these new regulations and the change in the cars are going to benefit McLaren and Aston Martin the most. I don't have the full stats to back it up, just a gut feeling. Well, I'll tell you the stats you need there, Anthony. The one stat you need to know why Aston Martin are going to benefit the most is because they've got Adrian Newey. Truthfully, Adrian Newey. That's why we know he's had his fingers all over this 2026 car for Aston Martin. That's why Lawrence Stroll brought him in and gave him ownership in the team. It's because Adrian Newey is the best in the world, in history, at building cars, apart from Chapman, maybe at Lotus. But Adrian Newey is the man you want building your new car on a new technical platform. So yeah, Aston Martin will benefit. McLaren, yeah, we're going to see a strong package from McLaren. We're going to see a strong package from Mercedes. I hope we see a strong package from Ferrari. You know, they're building their engines and their power plants, I should say, are going into the Haas and to Cadillac. Their main focus now to the end of the season is the 2026 car. But we might see Alpine. They're running the Mercedes power plant. We could see Alpine improve. Williams, don't rule out Vols, the team principal of Williams. He has done a great job taking from the back of the grid to a solid mid-team. Don't forget Williams, when Newey was there, you know, they were building cars which absolutely were all head and shoulders above every other car on the grid. The active ride height in, was it 94 or 95 in the Williams, was a game changer. You know, you managed to get Damon Hill world champion at a time when Senna's driving, Schumacher's driving, Prost is driving. You know, Coulthard, you just had some of the best drivers on the grid at that point. I threw Coulthard in there out of politeness, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like, we had legends on the grid. Legends on the grid. So yeah, that was Williams in their heyday. We could see, you know, Vols bring Williams back to that. Why not? New technical eras, new platforms bring opportunity, and I am here for it, because I think something needs to happen. Because if you look at the race today in Hungary, God, it was so damn boring. It was a snooze fest, wasn't it? 0 overtakes, apart from Russell on Leclerc, because Ferrari had increased the tyre pressures and turned the engine down so they could have what they believe to be a legal ride height car when it comes in to Parc Fermé. But there was no overtakes, was there? There was one place to overtake on that track, and that was coming into turn 1. And even then, we didn't see it. It was boring. So the new era of cars in 2026 need to bring the drama back. You know, we need to see racing, which brings me to a point of why I think that, you know, why I think every car on the grid should have their own unique power plant, or every car on the grid should have a standard power plant. You know, I don't think other teams should have sister teams on the grid, because you've effectively got 4 cars on your team, even not officially, but you have. Red Bull have got 4 drivers they can influence to influence the outcome of a race. I don't think that should happen. I don't think in Formula One that should be allowed. Regardless of the FIA saying they're going to try and police that, I don't think sister teams should be allowed. And I also don't think that teams should run other manufacturers' power plants. I think every team should have their own unique power plant, either one they've developed themselves, or one or a relationship like Aston Martin have got with Honda, an exclusive arrangement to run their power plant. I don't think Ferrari should be supplying Haas and Cadillac, or Mercedes supplying Alpine, you know, or Williams, whatever. I don't think that should be happening, but it is. I don't think at the pinnacle of motorsport that should be happening. But that's my view. I think it damages the integrity of the sport. And I think you've got another alternative where each team gives 50 million a year to a central engine power plant manufacturer. And then you can build around that and everyone gets the same power plant. I think maybe that should be done. I'm only throwing it out there. I'd love to know your thoughts. Anthony's back in the chat. Don't believe any of the rumours that Cadillac have all-American team down the road and the car is a whole different open-wheel platform compared to Formula One. Power plant right now is Aston Martin and Mercedes because they are a new team to the grid next year and they don't have an engine developed right now. Yeah, no, they don't, Anthony, you're right. Cadillac are developing their own engine, though. I say 3 years down the line, you will see an American power plant in that Cadillac. They're running the Ferrari for now, but mark my words, they want an American power plant in that Cadillac, and they will get it. We're going to see it within 5 years, for sure. Okay, so my final big up or story, I need to mention him. I want to give a little bit of love to Kimi Antonelli. He finished P10, he got a point. Now, I know that doesn't sound fantastic, but his qualifying yesterday was P15, not great. His confidence is going to be shot. He's 18 years old, carrying the weight of this subpar Mercedes second seat. He got a point today. I know it doesn't sound that great, but it's something for him to go into this summer break. It's something for him to hold on to, because if he'd scored no points, having this break, I think it'd be worse. And what we don't want to do is ruin 18-year-old talent. We need to give him some encouragement. And scoring a point, I think, was fair enough. P15 to P10, it's an okay. It's not good enough, we know, but it's okay. We do need to see him kick on, though, because he is fighting for that seat next year. He really is. He's got, 10 races left to prove to Toto Wolff and the world that he should be in that seat, or we will see him in a lesser seat next year, and we will see Toto put someone else in that. And if that happens, it'll be interesting because Bottas has done a handshake with Cadillac, saying he's going to drive for them. If Kimi Antonelli does not improve this season, and we see a move to, say, Alpine to drive there with Gasly, because they will be running a Mercedes engine, who takes the number 2 Mercedes seat? Well, it's obviously not Max. I think you could consider Bottas getting the offer, but he's already done a handshake with Cadillac, so it'd be very interesting to see what happens. But one thing I do know is if that Mercedes does not get closer if Antonelli does not get closer to George Russell, he won't be in the seat. But today is not about the negative. It's not about the bad news. It's about Kimi Antonelli scoring a point, P15, up to P10, qualifying P15 up to P10, and getting another point, and getting a point for Mercedes. But yeah, what do you take away from this roundup show? Well, you take away the drama at Ferrari. That's going to go on. Is Leclerc going to lose his points for today? Is he going to get disqualified? We'll find out soon. Is Hamilton going to bounce back from this confidence crisis and he just isn't able to get to grips with the car? And then the battle at the top. Lando Norris taking P1 today, but is he going to... has he got enough to pass Piastri and take the World Championship? It's going to be exciting between those two anyway. Oh, and also the revival of Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso, driver of the day. So good to see them back. So that's everything. That's your roundup of the Snoozefest in Budapest. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening. I will be back tomorrow, 7:30 for more news. And I will see you then. Ta-ta.